In 2001, a 14-year-old boy sat alone in a hospital bed in Lisbon, Portugal. He had just been told his heart was beating wrong. Not fast, not slow. Wrong. The kind of wrong that ends careers before they start. The kind of wrong that sends boys home and keeps them there. He had no mother beside him. She had gone back to work. He had no father beside him. His father was losing a war with alcohol that he would not survive. He had no money. No house he could call stable, no future that anyone around him could point to and say, that one, that boy, he is going to be fine. What he had was a football, and a question that had been burning inside him since he was old enough to kick one. How far can I actually go? 23 years later, the answer to that question is worth $1.1 billion. And it is not the money that is the most important part of this story. It is the mind that built it. The decisions, the sacrifices, the specific psychological frameworks that transformed a hungry, frightened, heart-conditioned teenager from the poorest island in Portugal into the most commercially valuable athlete in the history of human sport. That is what this video is about. Not the goals, not the trophies, the architecture of the mind behind them, and the lessons inside that architecture that apply directly to you. Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro was born on the 5th of February 1985 in Funchal, the capital of Madeira, a small volcanic island off the northwest coast of Africa that belongs to Portugal. Madeira is beautiful. It is also for the people who grow up poor on it, a place that feels like the edge of the world, a place where the boats go out and the opportunities do not come back. His father was José Diniz Aveiro, a municipal gardener, a kind man by most accounts, a man who loved his son deeply, and a man who was quietly, steadily, being destroyed by alcoholism from the time Ronaldo was a small child. His mother was Maria Dolores, a cook and a cleaner, a woman who worked every hour she had, a woman who, by her own account, considered terminating the pregnancy that produced Cristiano because she already had 3 children and no money and no space and no certainty about anything. She did not. She has said she does not know exactly why. She has said something told her not to. The family lived in a small house. Small is not the right word. The house was so small that Ronaldo shared a room with all 3 of his siblings. So small that the walls sweated in the heat and the cold came through the floor in winter. So small that leaving it, escaping it, became not just a dream, but a physical necessity for a boy whose body and mind were already too large for the space they had been given. He started playing football the only way poor children start anything, obsessively. Not because anyone told him to, because there was nothing else, no money for other activities, no car to take him somewhere better, no structured programmed, just a ball, and the street, and hours of time that had nowhere else to go. By the time he was 8 years old, the people who watched him play were already talking, not in the way people talk about promising children, in the way people talk about something they have never seen before. At age 10, he was invited to train with Andorinha, the local club. At age 11, he moved to Nacional, a bigger club, a harder training environment. He was the best player there too. At 12, the calls started coming from the mainland, from Sporting CP, one of the biggest clubs in Portugal, located in Lisbon, 500 kilometers from Madeira, from his mother, from his father, from his siblings, from everything he had ever known. He was 12 years old, and here is the first moment in this story where the psychological framework reveals itself. Because most 12-year-old boys, most human beings of any age, faced with the choice between comfort and possibility, choose comfort, especially when comfort means staying near the people you love, especially when possibility means leaving your mother at 12 and living in a dormitory with boys you have never met in a city you do not know. He did not choose comfort. He chose possibility. And he did it not with the breezy confidence of someone who does not understand what they are giving up. He did it fully understanding. He cried on the plane to Lisbon. By his own account, he cried for most of the flight. And then he landed, and he went to training, and he became the best player at Sporting within weeks of arriving. Because the willingness to grieve a sacrifice and make it anyway, that is not weakness. That is the rarest form of courage there is. At Sporting, he faced a new problem. His accent. Ronaldo spoke with a thick Madeiran accent that the Lisbon boys found funny. They mocked him for it. Daily. The kind of targeted social cruelty that boys inflict on the one who is different. He had two options. Retreat. Go home. Go back to Madeira, where nobody would mock him. Or become so undeniably good that the mockery became irrelevant. He chose the second option, not by ignoring the pain, by converting it. Every cruel comment became fuel. Every laugh at his accent became a reason to train harder. The psychological mechanism he was developing, entirely unconsciously at this age, was one of the most powerful in high-performance psychology. The ability to take external negativity and convert it into internal motivation. He was not born with thick skin. He built a furnace. At 14, everything almost ended. Doctors discovered he had a racing heart condition called tachycardia, a condition where the heart beats irregularly and without warning. A condition that had ended the careers of athletes older and further along than him. The solution was surgery, a laser procedure on his heart. Performed when he was 14 years old. He was back in training within days, not weeks, days. The medical staff told him to rest. He trained. This is not a story about recklessness. This is a story about a boy who had already decided, at 14, that the alternative to being on the pitch was not acceptable to him. That the risk of pushing too hard was preferable to the certainty of staying still. Asymmetric risk calculation. Most people calculate risk by asking what the worst case is if I push forward. He calculated risk by asking what the cost is of not pushing forward. The answer to that question was always the same. Everything. In 2003, he was 17 years old. Sporting played Manchester United in a pre-season friendly. Manchester United was at that time the most famous football club in the world. Their manager was Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the most successful coaches in the history of sport. Ferguson watched a 17-year-old from Madeira destroy his team's defense for 90 minutes. By the end of the match, his players were coming to him on the pitch asking him to sign the boy. His own players, coming to the opposing manager to ask him to sign a player who had just humiliated them. In August 2003, Ronaldo joined Manchester United for £12.24 million. He was given the number 7 shirt, the same shirt worn by Eric Cantona, by David Beckham, by George Best. A shirt with weight and history and expectations sewn into it. He was 17, and here is where the next phase of the psychological framework becomes visible. Because at Manchester United, Ronaldo did not just train, he obsessed. He stayed after training, every day. When other players went home, he was still on the pitch, working on his weaknesses with the same intensity most people reserve for their strengths. His left foot was weaker than his right. He worked on his left foot until it was equally dangerous. His heading was not elite. He worked on it until he could outjump defenders 4 inches taller than him. His pace was already exceptional. He made it faster. This is not a story about natural talent. This is a story about a man who identified the gap between where he was and where he intended to be, and then systematically, obsessively, joylessly, if necessary, closed it, one weakness at a time. By the time he left Manchester United in 2009, he had won 3 Premier League titles, 1 Champions League, 1 Ballon d'Or. He was sold to Real Madrid for £80 million. At the time, the most expensive transfer in the history of football. At Real Madrid, he did something most athletes never do. He began to think about his career not as a sport, but as a business. While other players signed endorsement deals passively, accepting what was offered, spending what arrived, he began to study the architecture of his own commercial value. He understood something almost nobody in sport understood at that time. That in the modern media environment, an athlete is not just a player. An athlete is a media channel, a content platform, a brand that generates attention, and attention in the digital economy is the most valuable commodity in the world. He hired a team, not just agents, a team. People who managed his image with the same strategic precision that a CEO manages a company. He built his social media presence not casually, but systematically, studying what content performed, what did not, what created engagement, what created silence. He became the first person on the platform to reach 100 million followers, then 200 million, then 300 million. Today, he is the most followed human being on the planet. 650 million followers. Not a brand account, not a company, a human being. And every one of those followers is a distribution channel for the products and companies that carry his name. The personal brand did not happen by accident. It was built the same way everything he has ever built was built. Through obsessive attention to detail, through long-term thinking, through the willingness to invest before the return was visible. The underwear line launched in 2013. Not just a licensing deal, a business with equity, with manufacturing partners, with distribution networks, fragrance, footwear, denim, hotels, a hotel chain with properties in Lisbon, Madeira, Madrid, and New York. Each one a physical monument to the brand he had spent 20 years building. And then there is the lifetime deal with the global sportswear giant, signed in 2016. Not a 10-year deal, a lifetime deal, estimated to be worth over $1 billion over its full term. They do not give lifetime deals based on current performance. They give lifetime deals to athletes whose commercial appeal will outlast their playing career, whose brand is bigger than their sport, who have become, to use the most important word in modern commercial strategy, a platform. Now let us go inside the mind. Framework 1. The identity comes before the achievement. He did not become the best and then believe it. He decided first, and then trained to close the gap between who he was and who he had already decided to become. Identity first, achievement follows. Framework 2. Pain is information, not instruction. Every setback, the mockery in Lisbon, the heart surgery, the criticism, the seasons where others won instead of him, he processed as data, not as verdict. The question was never, am I good enough? The question was always, what do I need to fix? Framework 3. Public standards create private accountability. He has said on camera, in interviews, in press conferences, I want to be the best who ever lived. Most people would find that terrifying. He found it useful, because once you say it publicly, the cost of not doing the work becomes higher than the cost of doing it. Framework 4. The body is a business asset. He treats his physical condition not as a byproduct of training, but as a primary investment. Sleep specialists, a personal chef, a physiotherapist who travels with him, nutrition managed with pharmaceutical precision, not because he enjoys the restriction, because he understands that his physical performance is the engine of a billion-dollar commercial enterprise, and you do not run a billion-dollar engine on cheap fuel. Framework 5. Legacy thinking creates long-term decisions. Every major decision has been made with one question in mind. What will this look like in 20 years? Not what does this pay me today? What does this build for the decades after football? The greatest competitive advantage available to any human being is simply thinking further ahead than the people around them. Think long-term, and you'll build a future most people never even imagine. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.